Ever think about how our bodies are like um, these incredible self-healing machines? I mean, it's really amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
We're going to dive into one of those amazing processes today, blood coagulation.
Okay.
You know, the thing that keeps us from turning into a horror movie every time we get a paper cut?
It's one of those things we totally take for granted until it goes wrong.
Exactly. And we're going to unpack all of that with an article from Assay Genie called Blood Coagulation Signaling Pathways, a critical overview.
Right.
It breaks down how this process isn't just some random clotting, but a whole choreographed cascade of events.
Yeah.
Get ready, because you're about to learn exactly what happens inside your veins every time you nick yourself shaving.
Okay, let's get into it.
So the article starts by talking about this coagulation cascade.
Right.
It's like a relay race with three main runners,
Mhm.
the intrinsic, extrinsic, and common pathways.
Okay.
And they all work together to create that final clot.
A relay race is a great analogy. Each pathway has its own starting gun, so to speak, and its specific job in the race.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Yeah.
So tell me about the intrinsic pathway. What kicks it off?
Think about what happens when you get a cut, you know? Suddenly, all this stuff that's normally tucked away inside your blood vessels gets exposed.
Right.
The intrinsic pathway is triggered by contact with these negatively charged surfaces, like collagen.
Hmm.
It's like the backup team, ready to amplify the clotting process.
Okay, and then there's the extrinsic pathway. Is that like the star player?
You could say that. This one is all about speed.
Got it.
It's triggered by tissue factor, a protein found outside blood vessels.
Okay.
So when there's an injury, tissue factor is like, hey, emergency over here, and sets the whole cascade in motion.
It's like the first responder to the scene of the crime.
Exactly. And eventually both the intrinsic and extrinsic pathways meet up at the common pathway.
Like the finish line of our relay race.
Exactly. And that final stretch leads to the production of thrombin, which is the real MVP of clot formation.
Okay.
Thrombin converts fibrinogen into fibrin, which forms a mesh that traps blood cells and forms a stable clot.
Now, there's one name that kept popping up in the article, Factor X.
Huh.
It sounded pretty important. What's its deal?
Oh, factor X is crucial. Remember how we talked about the intrinsic and extrinsic pathways converging? Well, factor X is like the bridge between them.
Right.
Both pathways can activate factor X, and once it's activated, it's like flipping a switch that sets off the final chain reaction, leading to that thrombin powerhouse.
Okay, so this whole system sounds incredibly efficient.
It is.
Maybe too efficient. Why don't we just spontaneously clot all the time?
Because thankfully our bodies are way smarter than that. We
Mhm.
have these incredible regulatory mechanisms to make sure the clotting only happens when and where it's needed.
Okay.
Think of it like a braking system. One of these braking systems is the protein C pathway. It's like having a cleanup crew that comes in after the construction project
Mhm.
to make sure things don't get out of hand.
So it stops us from becoming a walking blood clot. That would be bad.
Very bad. Activated protein C, along with its trusty sidekick protein S, deactivates certain clotting factors to prevent things from going into overdrive.
Okay.
And then we've got the tissue factor pathway inhibitor, or TFPI for short, which puts the brakes on the extrinsic pathway right from the start.
Mm.
It's like having a security guard at the tissue factor party, making sure things don't get too wild.
I love these analogies. It makes it so
Yeah.
much easier to understand. Now, the article also talks about these things called cellular receptors.
Right.
What are they all about?
These receptors are like the eyes and ears of the system. They're
Yeah.
on cells, like platelets, and the lining of our blood vessels.
Okay.
And they can sense when there's damage, then they send out signals that either ramp up the clotting process or dial it back.
Ah.
It's all about maintaining that delicate balance.
So it's like they're constantly monitoring this situation and adjusting the response as needed.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
it really is. And this is where it gets really exciting, because by understanding this intricate system, scientists are developing new ways to treat clotting disorders.
Now we're talking. The article mentions some therapeutic implications. What kind of treatments are we talking about here?
Well, think about someone who's at risk of developing dangerous blood clots.
Right.
We've got medications like warfarin, which has been around for a while, and the newer DOACs,
Okay.
the direct oral anticoagulants.
Got it.
These medications work by targeting specific points in the clotting cascade, kind of like putting a wrench in the gears to slow things down.
So it's like knowing exactly which wire to cut to stop the machine from overloading.
That's a great way to put it. But of course, each medication has its own pros and cons, so it's all about finding the right fit for each patient.
Right.
It's a decision doctors make very carefully.
Makes sense. The article also mentioned something about personalized medicine.
Yeah,
What does that mean in the context of blood clotting?
that's one of the most exciting frontiers in this field. It's all about moving away from a one-size-fits-all approach and tailoring treatments based on individual factors,
Hmm.
like a person's genetics or their specific medical history.
So instead of just prescribing the same medication to everyone, doctors are getting more precise in their approach.
Exactly. It's like having a custom-made suit instead of buying one off the rack. And this is where research into the blood coagulation pathways is really paying off.
Right.
Because the more we understand about how these pathways work, the better we can pinpoint the exact problem and target it with the most effective treatment.
This is mind-blowing stuff. And the
Right.
article wasn't just about the science. You also talked about the author, Tareem Ali,
Right.
a bioinformatics expert who did some really impressive research at a prestigious lab in Pakistan.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see how research from all over the world is contributing to these breakthroughs.
It's a global effort, for sure. And bioinformatics is a critical piece of the puzzle
Okay.
because it allows us to analyze huge amounts of data and find patterns that we wouldn't be able to see otherwise.
It's like having a superpower detective working on the case of blood clotting.
Exactly. And those detective skills are helping us to develop more targeted therapies and even explore the potential of gene editing to correct genetic defects that cause clotting disorders.
Gene editing. Now we're talking science fiction.
It sounds futuristic, but it's becoming more of a reality every day, and it could revolutionize how we treat these conditions in the future.
Wow. Okay, so to recap, we've learned about the three main pathways of the coagulation cascade, the intrinsic, extrinsic, and common,
Right.
and how they work together to form clots.
Yeah.
But we've also learned that there's a whole braking system in place to prevent excessive clotting,
Right.
and that scientists are using this knowledge to develop new and more personalized treatments for clotting disorders.
It's a constantly evolving field, and the research is incredibly promising. And it all starts with understanding this intricate cascade of events happening inside our bodies every single day.
This whole deep dive really makes you appreciate the complexity and importance of the blood coagulation system. It's like the silent guardian working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep us healthy.
It is.
But here's a question that's been swirling around in my head. If blood clots can be so dangerous,
Yeah.
what can we do to prevent them from forming in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the good news is that researchers are tackling that very challenge.
Okay.
It's not just about treating clots after they form, it's about stopping them before they even start.
So it's like a pre-crime unit for blood clots.
Exactly. There's a big push towards preventative measures.
Okay.
And this is where understanding individual risk factors comes in.
Hmm.
Think about things like family history, lifestyle choices, certain medical conditions. These can all tip the scales towards a higher risk of developing clotting problems.
So it's like a personalized risk assessment, kind of like those online quizzes that tell you what kind of cheese you are.
Well, maybe not exactly like that, but you get the idea.
Okay.
By identifying those who are at higher risk, doctors can recommend lifestyle changes like regular exercise and a healthy diet, or even preventative medications in some cases.
Got it.
It's all about being proactive.
So it's like knowing the warning signs and taking steps to stay ahead of the game.
Precisely. And the article highlighted some really interesting research on the protein C pathway and its potential role in preventing stroke.
Oh, wow.
You see, for a long time, scientists thought of the protein C pathway mainly as a way to control clotting after an injury.
Right.
But now there's growing evidence that it might actually play a bigger role in preventing clots from forming in the first place, especially in the brain.
So like a security guard that's always on patrol, not just responding to alarms.
That's a great way to put it. And this opens up a whole new avenue for stroke prevention. Imagine if we could develop therapies that specifically boost the protein C pathway,
Right.
keeping those blood vessels in the brain clear and healthy.
Now that would be a game changer. It sounds like we've come a long way in understanding blood clots, but there's still so much more to learn.
Absolutely. But thanks to the dedication of researchers like Tareem Ali and countless others around the world, we're constantly gaining new insights into this complex system.
Yeah.
And those insights are leading to more targeted treatments, better preventative measures, and ultimately healthier lives for people everywhere.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me. I always thought of blood clots as something to avoid, but I never realized how much intricate biology is involved and how much research is going into understanding and managing them.
It's a fascinating field, and we've only just scratched the surface today. But I hope this conversation has given you a new appreciation for the incredible processes happening inside your own body, and maybe even inspired you to learn more about the amazing world of blood coagulation.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, if you want to dive even deeper into this topic, be sure to check out the full article by Tareem Ali on the Assay Genie website. You'll be amazed by what you discover.
It's a great read for anyone curious about the science behind this vital process.
And as always, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the wonders of science. Until next time.